Check, check, check. Making sure we are looking good, sounding good, and looking good. Hello and how we doing, everybody? Hope all's well today. So I've noticed lately a lot more people have been getting into skate photography. So I wanted to use this video to give some tips and some personal and helpful advice to you if you're trying to get into some skate photography. I made a list right here of just some points that I wanted to make for this video. I don't want it to be centered too much around the gear aspect, which there are some things gear-wise in here that I think are important and things that you do need to do skate photography, but I want to stay away from it being the kind of video to where it limits people from being able to do it themselves because they're not able to afford the gear that whoever in the video is telling them that they should have in order to be able to do something. Before we start, just wanted that as a bit of a disclaimer. This is kind of just things that you should know. So, with that being said, let's get right into it. So the first thing I have written down here on this list might sound a little harsh. Take it with a grain of salt because I don't mean it in a harsh way. I mean it in a way of it's just gonna make getting into skate photography and learning about it 10 times easier for you. So therefore, in skate photography, the first thing I have on this list is to be a skateboarder. As someone who isn't a skateboarder, I know that you probably don't want to hear that. That's probably the last thing you want to hear if you're not a skateboarder and are just trying to get into skate photography. But I have a reason for saying this. I'm not saying this as in if you don't skate, you're not allowed to do skate photography. Anybody can. Whoever the hell wants to do skate photography can get into it. But the thing is that being a skateboarder and getting into skate photography, as a skateboarder, you've already obtained probably like 60% of the information that is needed for skate photography before you're even starting. Whereas if you're just a photographer or just, I guess, just a normal Joe, it's gonna be a huge learning curve for you to get into it. You're gonna have way more to learn, and you're not only gonna have to understand the photography aspect of shooting skateboarding, but you have to understand the skateboarding aspect of shooting skateboarding. As in, if you don't know what stances are, like goofy or regular, you're not going to know which side to shoot the skateboarder from. If you don't know tricks or how they look or at what points to shoot them, you're not going to have that in your head already. As just a person that doesn't skate, I could only imagine like having to consider all those factors at once just to shoot a photo cannot be easy. It's hard for me to think in that mindset since I was skateboarder first, then skate photographer. I've always been a skateboarder. Those types of things are already just second nature to me as being a skateboarder. I already know that knowledge, and it's knowledge I don't even have to think about coming into skate photography because it's just already there and already makes sense to me. But I imagine somebody who isn't a skate photographer coming into that and having to digest all that information, that probably has to be incredibly intimidating. So that's why I say be a skateboarder, not necessarily saying that you have to be a skateboarder to shoot skate photography, but being a skateboarder will make it 10 times easier for you, and it will make a lot of stuff, kind of given. So with that being said, I think the second thing I want to talk about is know your tricks and know what the tricks look like, and pretty much knowing what point to shoot tricks. You're going to want to know what each trick looks like. Let's say you're shooting somebody skating a ledge. A back tail slide is going to look completely different than, say, like a front nose blunt. You're going to want to shoot those two tricks completely different ways because they look different, the body is positioned differently while shooting that. So there's two different angles you're going to want to shoot those tricks on. I mean, you can shoot it the same angle, but you're going to want to shoot the tricks in a way that fully shows the trick. You've got to just know your tricks in that sense to know like already what the trick is going to look like and knowing the tricks and knowing what trick is being tried and how it looks can help that tremendously. And also with the timing of tricks. So you're going to want to figure out when to press the shutter when somebody is doing the trick. Or let's say somebody is doing a kickflip back tail. I think that's a good example for a trick to shoot. So I think for a kickflip back tail, if you're shooting just a back tail and nothing else, just a regular old back tail, you're probably going to shoot that at the point that they're fully on the ledge and in it. Imagine that they did kickflip back tail and you shot the back tail part of it right when they're just sitting up in the back tail. Photo is not going to show that they kickflipped into that. When a skater's doing a kickflip back tail, you might want to consider pressing that shutter just a little bit earlier, right at that point where the board is just about to fully flip around and they're just about to get right up in that ledge to where they're almost touching the ledge but not fully on, but you can tell they're getting into a back tail and they're flipping into it. And I think the same thing goes for handrails, which is something that I've learned recently, is shooting a skater going down the handrail, you don't necessarily, I mean it depends on the situation of course, but you don't necessarily want to shoot the trick right when they're fully in it, sitting comfortably on the rail. One of the best times to shoot a trick in that aspect would be right when they're about to, get on it, or right when they're just beginning to touch it, at a point to where it can't be imitated, it can't be faked. You want to catch that trick at the highest point of action going on, a point that can't be replicated, a point that can only be done if you're fully doing the trick and actually doing it. So next I want to get into the gear aspect of skate photography. Not saying that you need these things in order to shoot skate photography. It's more so some of these things are pretty, the standard for skate photography. And I by no means have a crazy gear setup for skate photography. Mine's pretty basic. I guess you could consider it a beginner's setup, if you will. I don't know. I feel like I'm getting a little in the intermediate stage of skate photography. I feel like I've been doing it long enough now and I've finally figured out my vision for it and how my photos look and how I want them to look. So I feel like I'm definitely pushing past beginner, and now it's I feel pretty intermediate. So anyways, let's get to the gear. So gear wise, if you're wanting to get into skate photography, one of the most important camera gear pieces you could possibly buy that will help so much is getting a fisheye lens. Now, a fisheye lens, I don't need to explain what a fisheye lens looks like. I think at this point, everybody knows what a fisheye lens looks like. Since the beginning of skate photography, people have been using fisheyes for it. It just makes skateboarding look good, and there's no way to argue that. It just does. Buying a fisheye is a very important thing and something you need to consider before buying anything else if you're wanting to get into skate photography. I mean, of course, camera. I would say your first step is to buy a fisheye lens. It's going to help so much. It's going to help you just kind of get an idea of what you're doing, and it's going to kind of help you be able to shoot skate photos of anybody and anything. I've shot flat ground tricks on a fisheye and you can make them look incredibly badass. Having a fisheye, you're already good to go. I'm not an advocate for wanting to tell you all to buy something. I never want to be on here saying buy this, because I understand not everybody's loaded on money. I'm not, but I do think that getting a fisheye is a very important purchase for you. That's what it looks like. As for my fisheye goes, I just have one of these Optica fisheyes. I'm pretty sure I bought this for $160. I would say don't cheap out on a fisheye, but you don't have to get a crazy expensive one. So, second in the gear aspect is flashes. Flashes, ooh. I think flashes are very important. Whenever I first started shooting photos of my friends skateboarding way back in the day, I would never use flashes. And granted, you don't have to use flashes. You really don't have to. I just think the flashes just change the game. If you're really trying to step up your skate photography, bringing in flashes to the equation will step your game up. Once I started using flashes, I feel like my skate photography just skyrocketed. Although it does make it a little bit more difficult because you have more gear to keep track of and more things that you have to set up and get ready before you shoot a skate photo, it's all worth it in the end. And like I said, you don't have to use flashes. There's plenty of good skate photos that have been done without flash. I'll show a few examples of mine right here that I didn't use any flash on. Cue the photos. So yeah, you see, you don't have to use a flash, but also check out the photos where I do use flash on. I think flash definitely helps a lot, and it's honestly fun. For me, I have a blast messing with flashes and just figuring out where to put a flash to light up a spot. I think flash is very, very important in skate photography.
Oh my God!
And if you look at magazines, photo books, or just on Instagram of skate photos, you'll see that the majority of them use a flash. I think whenever considering shooting skate photography with a flash, start off with just one flash. See how you feel with that, get comfortable with it, get used to it, figure out what the hell you're doing. Don't overwhelm yourself with getting 2 flashes or even more. I started with just one flash with my skate photography. I used a few years of just shooting with one flash to get used to that. I feel my game with skate photography really stepped up whenever I got one of these hot shoe mounts to where I could hook this to the top of my camera and could set my flashes anywhere. And also at the same time of getting this, I got a second flash. So now this right here is my complete skate photography setup. I have the 2 flashes, my hot shoe mount, my camera, and my fisheye lens. That right there is my setup. I hardly ever even use a tripod for my flashes either. I probably should. Don't take that advice. If you have a tripod for your flash, use it. It makes it 10 times easier. Once I got the hot shoe mount and could put my flashes anywhere and could send the signal to the flashes whenever my shutter goes off, that's when the game changed. And it honestly, it got even funner after that. It's a huge learning curve whenever you bring another flash into it and trying to figure it out. Like I said, it's fun. It's a fun learning curve. You know you're improving yourself, and you can see that through your photos. And before I get off of gear talk real quick, I just want to say that for long lens, I shoot all my long lens skate photos have been with this Canon 50mm lens. Nothing else. Literally the 2 lenses I use for shooting skateboarding is a 50mm lens and my fisheye. And I know the 50mm isn't ideal for shooting skate photography, but I make it work, and it has honestly a badass little lens. So yeah, I would say starting off with skate photography, you just need a good digital camera, fisheye lens, and a flash. I would start off with that. Keep it simple, don't overwhelm yourself, start off slow, work your way up. Little extra tip before we get out of the gear talk is whenever you start messing with flashes, by God, always have extra batteries. Please, just do yourself a favor and make sure you always have extra batteries in your bag. Alright, so with that being said, since we're having a little bit of lens talk, try to switch it up. Try to use different lenses. I think it's important to not try and get too caught up in just shooting fisheye, because trust me, it's really easy to just overuse the fisheye lens and just only shoot on that, because it's honestly really fun to shoot skateboarding on a fisheye lens. So it is really hard to, stray away from the fisheye a bit, but just a little tip from me is, switch it up. Don't only shoot fisheye. If you have a long lens, try and use that just as much as the fisheye. Okay, so let's talk about when it comes to framing and composition of a skate photo. So I think it's important whenever shooting a skate photo is you need to tell the story of the photo. You need to tell the story of the skater and the trick. You need to be able to tell what they're doing, where they came from, and where they're going. You need to be able to express this in the photo with no words said. What's important in that is showing the entirety of a spot. Let's show some examples here. For this photo, they're doing an ollie over the fence and into the alleyway. Even without explaining that, you would be able to tell what's going on. By including every aspect of the spot in the photo and everywhere the skater goes, it tells the story of the trick that's happening. Something that's important to do if you're trying to really improve your skate photography, take notes from other skate photographers. With that being said, with this next tip, I actually got from listening to a podcast from Matt Price. He got this information from Grant Britton, which... Matt was explaining how one of the most important things in a skate photo is making sure the skater's face is in focus and lit up well. Next, I think it's really important to know the history of skate photography when getting into skate photography. I think that just kind of goes into anything. You need to know, the people that came before you that blazed the trail in order for you to even be able to do it yourself. It's just really just paying homage to the ones that came before you. Get into the history of it. Figure out where it started. Know your photographers. Figure out other skate photographers. Find which one's your favorite. It's the same thing as skateboarding. You find your favorite skateboarder, you try to imitate their style, you wear what they wear, it's just skateboarding. So take that same aspect into skate photography. For example, I am a huge fan of Jake Darwin's photos. I've really been looking at a bunch of his work lately and just trying to kind of not imitate it, but take some of the aspects in his work and apply them to my work. He has just some incredibly clean skate photos. I can tell he probably uses multiple flashes because most of the time in his photos, what I really like about them is that the sky isn't blown out. Most of the time you can see like he's got a nice deep blue in his sky, which I really like about his photos. And other than that, they're just always so clean, so crisp, just a really good, solid skate photo. Anyways, yeah, pretty much just know your history. Look at magazines. Look on Instagram. There's skate photographers everywhere if you look hard enough. One of the biggest things that I've done in skate photography that's helped the most is just talk to other skate photographers. Meet up with some other ones, talk to other ones, get into the conversation, get it going. I think that's one of those things that you can do that can help improve your skate photography pretty quick. Since we're on the topic of trying to improve your skate photos, is just study other skate photographers' work. You can open up any skate magazine and you will have all the skate photos you could imagine to look at and study. Something I like to do is go through skate magazines and just browse through all the photos. Honestly, I look more at skate magazines now for the photography aspect of it, more so than just the skateboarding and the skateboarders involved. Try and figure out where they set up their flash. Try and figure out why they chose the angles they chose or what they chose to shoot it on. See if you can just try and pick apart each skate photo as much as you can. That's something that's helped me a lot with my skate photography and just trying to kind of replicate what the pro skate photographers do. It'll help you kind of get a better idea of how to set up your shot, how to set up flashes and all that jazz. One last thing I'm going to say here is a quick little rundown of settings that you should probably use, or just kind of a general idea around the area of settings that I recommend. I'm just going to tell you the settings that I shoot on that usually helps me get good results. Usually I'll shoot anywhere between a shutter speed of 500 to 1000. I like to keep it at maybe around 800 to 1000 if I can. It depends on if you're using flash or not, of course, but right now I'm talking about if you're using a flash. I would keep it at a pretty high shutter speed. If you're shooting with a flash, I would say have your shutter speed anywhere from between 500 to 1000. Your ISO kind of depends the lighting situation. A lot of the time, since I really like shooting my skate photos at sunset time, I usually shoot with a pretty high ISO, which does limit me whenever it comes to editing, shadows and all that wise. I can get some, pretty harsh grain in in there. When shooting fisheye, I always keep my aperture pretty high, usually at around 8 to 11. Essentially, it's really whatever settings you find comfortable and want to use. There's really not a set rule for it. There's really not a set rule in skateboarding, so that's why it's special and why we love it. When it comes to skate photography, it is essentially the same thing. There's not really any set rules, but there's recommendations. And that's why I made this video for you guys, is so I can help you with some recommendations and some advice on skate photography, especially if you're a beginner trying to get into skate photography. I hope these tips have helped. I hope you can take some of this advice and apply it to your own photography. Really, one of the biggest things though, before we end this video, is if you really want to learn how to do it, just go out and do it. You'll learn the most by getting out there and doing it. With that being said, turn off this video, stop listening to me, grab your camera, grab your skateboard, go hit the streets, go have fun, and go learn. I hope this video is helpful for you all, and I hope you have a fantastic day, and I hope the New Year's treating you well. Peace out and much love.